Hey everyone, before we dive into this gripping tale, please hit that subscribe button to join our storytelling community and never miss a story like this one. The grand ballroom glittered under chandeliers, their light dancing on gilded walls. I stood at the edge, a maid in a borrowed gown, my heart pounding. The Duke's voice had just cut through the crowd like a blade. "A maid will never dance with my son," he declared, his tone icy. His words stung, but I held my head high. I wasn't here to cower. The crowd parted, their whispers buzzing like flies. I felt every eye on me, judging, curious. My hands trembled, but I clenched them into fists. The music played on, a lilting waltz, but it felt distant. I was no stranger to hard work, to scrubbing floors until my knees ached. But tonight, I was more than a maid. I was here to prove it. The Duke's son, Lord Edwin, stood across the room, his eyes locked on mine. I took a deep breath, my resolve hardening. This was my moment. I wouldn't let it slip away. The ballroom was a sea of silk and velvet, swirling with nobles in their finery. I felt like an impostor, my gown a borrowed shield. The Duke's words still echoed in my mind, sharp and cruel. I'd heard worse, though, years of slights as a servant. But this was different. This was public, meant to shame me. I glanced at Edwin, his face pale but defiant. He'd invited me here, against his father's wishes. The music swelled, and couples began to dance, their steps graceful. I stood frozen, my heart a drumbeat in my chest. A maid didn't belong here, they thought. But I wasn't just a maid. I'd read every book in the manor's library, taught myself poise. I straightened my spine, feeling the weight of my choice. Edwin's eyes urged me forward. I took a step, then another. The crowd's murmurs grew louder, a tide of disapproval washing over me. I could feel the Duke's glare from across the room. His words had been a command, not just a statement. "A maid will never dance with my son." I wanted to scream back, to challenge him. But words wouldn't win this battle. Action would. My gown shimmered faintly, a gift from Edwin's sister, who believed in me. I moved closer to the dance floor, my steps deliberate. The music was a waltz, elegant and inviting, but daunting. I'd practiced in secret, late nights in the servants' quarters. My hands steadied as I reached the edge of the floor. Edwin was there, waiting, his hand outstretched. The crowd held its breath. I could turn back now, retreat to the shadows. But I didn't. I took Edwin's hand, his grip warm and steady, grounding me. The crowd gasped, a collective intake of breath. The Duke's face darkened, his eyes narrowing to slits. I didn't care. This was bigger than him, bigger than me. It was about proving I was more than my station. The music continued, but it felt like a challenge now. Edwin smiled, a quiet defiance in his eyes. We stepped onto the dance floor, the polished wood gleaming underfoot. My heart raced, but my steps were sure. I'd practiced for this, dreamed of it. The nobles watched, some with scorn, others with curiosity. I could feel their judgment, but I pushed it aside. This was my moment, my rebellion. The waltz began to pull us in. We moved together, Edwin leading with practiced ease, me following with determination. The music wrapped around us, a cocoon of sound. I could feel the weight of every stare, but I refused to falter. The Duke's voice still rang in my ears, but it fueled me now. "A maid will never dance with my son." Oh, but I was dancing, and I was good at it. My gown swirled, catching the light, and for a moment, I felt beautiful. Not just a maid, but a woman with dreams, with fire. Edwin's hand tightened on mine, a silent encouragement. The crowd's whispers faded, or maybe I just stopped hearing them. The music was all that mattered now. Step, turn, glide. I was alive. The waltz carried us across the floor, our movements fluid, almost defiant. I caught glimpses of faces, some shocked, some intrigued. The Duke stood rigid, his fists clenched at his sides. I could feel his anger, a storm brewing across the room. But Edwin's smile kept me anchored. He'd chosen me, not some noble lady, but me. I wasn't naive. I knew this wouldn't change my place in their world. But tonight, it didn't matter. Tonight, I was here, dancing with the air. My steps grew bolder, my heart lighter. The music swelled, and I let it carry me. I wasn't just a maid tonight. I was a force, undeniable. The chandelier above sparkled, and I felt like I belonged. Halfway through the dance, I noticed the other couples slowing, watching us. The floor felt like it was ours alone. Edwin's eyes never left mine, his trust in me unshakable. I could feel the Duke's rage, but it was distant now, unimportant. The music was my guide, each note a step toward freedom. I'd spent years invisible, scrubbing, serving, silent. But not tonight. Tonight, I was seen. My gown caught the light, a soft glow against the sea of richer fabrics. I didn't need their approval, only my own. Edwin spun me gently, and I laughed, the sound surprising even me. The crowd murmured, but I didn't care. This was my defiance, my joy. The music pulsed, and I matched it. The waltz was nearing its end, the notes slowing, softening. My chest heaved, but I wasn't tired. I was alive. Edwin's hand was steady, his smile proud. I could see his father out of the corner of my eye, unmoving. His words had been meant to stop this, to keep me in my place. But I wasn't in my place anymore. I was here on this dance floor, with his son. The crowd's whispers had turned to a low hum, some even nodding in approval. I'd surprised them, maybe even impressed them. It didn't matter. This wasn't for them. It was for me, for the girl who'd dreamed beyond her station. The music paused, just for a moment. I held my breath. The final notes of the waltz hung in the air, delicate and fleeting. Edwin and I slowed, our steps perfectly in sync. The crowd was silent now, watching, waiting. I could feel the weight of the moment, heavy but exhilarating. The Duke's face was a mask of fury, but he didn't move. I wondered what he'd do next, but I pushed the thought away. This was my victory, small but mine. Edwin's hand lingered in mine, warm and sure. The music stopped, and so did we, standing in the center of the floor. The silence was deafening, a moment frozen in time. I lifted my chin, meeting the Duke's gaze. I wasn't afraid. Not anymore. The silence stretched, taut as a bowstring, then snapped. A single clap broke the quiet, then another. I turned, startled, to see Edwin's sister smiling, her hands coming together. Others joined, hesitant at first, then stronger. The Duke didn't clap, but he didn't speak either. His silence was louder than his words had been. Edwin squeezed my hand, his eyes shining with pride. I felt a rush of warmth, of triumph. I'd done it. I'd danced, and I hadn't faltered. The crowd's applause grew, a wave of sound washing over me. I wasn't just a maid tonight. I was someone. The chandelier glowed above, and I felt its light inside me. The applause faded, but the moment lingered, electric in the air. I stood there, still holding Edwin's hand, my heart racing. The Duke's eyes bored into me, but I didn't flinch. I'd faced worse than his disapproval, years of toil, of being invisible. Tonight I was visible, and it felt like power. Edwin led me off the dance floor, his touch gentle but firm. The crowd parted for us, their faces a mix of awe and unease. I could hear whispers, some kind, some not. It didn't matter. I'd proven something, to them and to myself. The music started again, a new waltz, but I felt like I'd already won. My gown brushed the floor, a reminder of who I'd become tonight. Edwin leaned close, his voice low. "You were magnificent," he said, and I believed him. His words warmed me, chasing away the chill of doubt. We moved to the edge of the ballroom, away from the crowd's eyes. The Duke was still watching, his expression unreadable now. I wondered what he was thinking, but I didn't care as much as I thought I would. I danced with his son, defied his decree. The memory of the waltz still thrummed through me, each step a rebellion. I glanced at Edwin, his smile soft but fierce. He'd taken a risk, too, choosing me. The chandelier's light flickered, casting shadows that danced like we had. The other nobles resumed their dancing, but their eyes kept drifting to me. I stood taller, refusing to shrink under their scrutiny. I wasn't just a maid anymore, not in their eyes or mine. Edwin's sister approached, her grin wide and genuine. "You showed them," she whispered, squeezing my arm. Her support meant more than I could say. The Duke hadn't moved, but his silence felt like a concession. I wondered if he'd try to punish me later, but the thought didn't scare me. I'd faced him once, and I'd do it again. The music played on, a backdrop to my racing thoughts. I felt alive, unstoppable. Edwin guided me to a quiet corner, where the chatter was softer, the air cooler. "You didn't have to do that," he said, his voice earnest. But I did. I wanted to tell him. I had to prove I was more than what they saw. Instead, I smiled, my heart still pounding from the dance. The memory of the Duke's words stung less now, dulled by my triumph. I could still feel the rhythm of the waltz in my bones, a reminder of what I'd done. Edwin's eyes were warm, his presence a shield against the world. I wasn't alone in this. The ballroom sparkled, but I shone brighter. A servant passed with a tray of wine, and I caught her eye, recognition, then a quick nod. She knew what I'd done, what it meant. I wasn't the only one who'd felt the weight of the Duke's words. Other maids, other servants, they'd heard it too. My dance wasn't just for me, it was for them, for all of us. I stood straighter, feeling their silent support. Edwin noticed, his brow furrowing. "What is it?" he asked. I shook my head, not ready to explain. The music shifted, a new melody, lighter but still grand. I wanted to dance again, to keep this feeling alive. The night wasn't over yet. The Duke finally moved, striding toward us with purpose. My stomach tightened, but I didn't back away. Edwin stepped closer, his body a subtle shield. The Duke stopped a few feet away, his face a storm of emotions. "You've made your point," he said, his voice low, dangerous. I met his gaze, unflinching. I hadn't just made a point, I'd rewritten the rules. The crowd watched, their chatter fading. I could feel their anticipation, their curiosity. Would he lash out? Would he banish me? I didn't know, but I was ready. The music played on, oblivious to the tension. I held my ground, a maid no longer. "Father," Edwin said, his voice steady but sharp. "She belongs here as much as anyone." The Duke's eyes flickered, but he didn't respond. I could see the conflict in him, pride, anger, maybe even grudging respect. I didn't need his approval, but I wanted him to see me. Really see me. Not just a maid, but a woman who dared to step forward. The crowd was quiet now, hanging on our every move. The chandelier's light cast long shadows, and I felt like I was standing in a spotlight. The Duke's silence stretched, heavy and unbroken. I waited, my heart steady now. I'd already won. The Duke turned away, his shoulders stiff, and the crowd exhaled. I hadn't realized I'd been holding my breath. Edwin's hand found mine again, a quiet reassurance. "He won't forget this," he murmured, and I nodded. Neither would I. The music swelled, pulling the nobles back to their dances, but I felt separate from them now. I'd crossed a line, and there was no going back. My gown felt heavier, but not in a bad way. It was the weight of my choice. I glanced at Edwin's sister, who winked at me. The night felt alive, full of possibilities. I wasn't done yet. Another waltz began, and Edwin tilted his head, a question in his eyes. I smiled, nodding, and we stepped back onto the dance floor. The crowd didn't gasp this time, but they watched. I could feel their eyes, less hostile now, more curious. My steps were surer, my movements bolder. The Duke's words had lost their power over me. I was dancing again, with Edwin, in front of them all. The music was a river, carrying us along, and I led it. I wasn't just a maid, not anymore. I was a force, a spark, a woman who dared. The chandelier glowed, and I felt its warmth. The dance ended, and the crowd applauded again, warmer this time. I felt a rush of pride, of joy. Edwin's smile was radiant, his hand still in mine. We moved off the floor, but I didn't feel like retreating. I felt like I could take on the world. The Duke was nowhere to be seen now, and I wondered if he'd left. It didn't matter. I'd faced him, faced them all, and I'd won. The music shifted to a lively reel, and I laughed, caught up in the moment. Edwin's sister joined us, her eyes sparkling with mischief. The night was young, and so was I. I was ready for whatever came next. The reel was faster, more chaotic, and I watched the dancers whirl across the floor. Edwin's sister pulled me into a conversation, her voice bright with excitement. "You've started something," she said, her eyes gleaming. I wasn't sure what she meant, but I felt it too, a shift, a crack in the old order. The nobles were still watching me, but their gazes were different now. Some smiled, others whispered, but I didn't feel small anymore. I felt like I'd claimed a piece of this world. The music pulsed, and I tapped my foot, caught up in its rhythm. Edwin stood beside me, his presence steady. I wasn't alone in this fight. A young lord approached, his bow stiff but polite. "May I have the next dance?" he asked, surprising me. I glanced at Edwin, who nodded, his smile encouraging. I took the lord's hand, stepping back onto the floor. The music was a stately minuet now, slower, more formal. I moved with confidence, my training holding strong. The crowd watched, but I didn't feel their judgment anymore. I felt their curiosity, maybe even their respect. The Duke's words echoed faintly, but they were just noise now. I was dancing again, proving I belonged. The chandelier's light bathed us, and I felt its glow inside me. The minuet ended, and the Lord bowed, his smile genuine. "You dance beautifully," he said, and I thanked him, my voice steady. I returned to Edwin, who was watching with pride. "You're changing things," he said softly. I wasn't sure if that was true, but I wanted to believe it. The night felt different now, like the air itself had shifted. The nobles were mingling, some even approaching me to talk. I answered with poise, my years of listening in the shadows paying off. The music played on, a backdrop to this new world I was stepping into. I felt like I could do anything. Edwin's sister pulled me aside, her voice low and conspiratorial. "The other maids are talking about you," she said. "They're inspired." My heart swelled at that, a warmth spreading through me. I hadn't just danced for myself, I'd danced for them, for every servant who'd been told they were less. I glanced across the room, catching the eye of another maid serving drinks. She smiled, a small, secret thing, and I nodded back. The music shifted again, a soft, romantic waltz. Edwin took my hand, leading me back to the floor. The crowd didn't stare as much now. I was becoming part of this world. We danced again, the waltz slower, more intimate. Edwin's eyes were locked on mine, and I felt a connection deeper than words. The Duke's absence was noticeable now, a void in the room. I wondered if he'd retreated to lick his wounds. It didn't matter. I'd faced him, and I'd won. The music wrapped around us, soft and warm, like a promise. My gown flowed, catching the light, and I felt beautiful, powerful. The crowd was a blur, their faces unimportant. This moment was ours, mine and Edwin's. The chandelier glowed above, a beacon of hope. I let myself dream, just for a moment. The waltz ended, and we stepped back, breathless but smiling. The crowd's applause was softer now, more natural. I felt like I'd crossed a threshold, like I belonged here. Edwin's sister joined us again, her laughter infectious. "You're the talk of the ball," she said, and I blushed, unused to the attention. But I liked it, this feeling of being seen. The music shifted to a lively country dance, and I watched the nobles pair off, their steps quick and joyous. I didn't join this time, but I didn't feel left out. I felt like I'd earned my place. The night was alive, and so was I. A group of young ladies approached, their smiles hesitant but kind. "Where did you learn to dance like that?" one asked. I told them about the late nights, the secret lessons, the books I'd read. They listened, genuinely curious, and I realized they saw me as a person, not just a maid. Edwin stood nearby, his presence a quiet support. The music played on, and I felt a shift in the air, a loosening of the old rules. The Duke's words had been meant to chain me, but I'd broken free. The chandelier's light seemed brighter now, or maybe that was just me. I was no longer in the shadows. The night wore on, the dances blending into one another, a whirlwind of music and motion. I danced again, with Edwin, with others, each step a declaration. The crowd had accepted me, or at least they were trying to. I could feel the change, subtle but real. The Duke hadn't returned, and I wondered if he ever would. It didn't matter. I'd faced him, faced them all, and I'd come out stronger. Edwin's hand found mine again, his touch a reminder of why I'd dared. The music was softer now, the night winding down. But I wasn't ready to let it end. I felt like I could keep going forever. As the final dance approached, Edwin pulled me close. "You've changed everything," he whispered. I wasn't sure if that was true, but I felt it, the possibility of change. The music swelled, a grand, sweeping waltz, and we joined it one last time. The crowd watched, but their eyes were kind now, admiring. I moved with grace, with power, with joy. The Duke's words were a distant memory, powerless against what I'd done. My gown shimmered, my heart soared. The chandelier's light bathed us, and I felt like I was glowing. This was my night, my triumph. I wasn't just a maid. I was me. The music stopped, and the room erupted in applause, louder than before. Edwin and I stood in the center, hands clasped, hearts racing. The crowd cheered, and I saw pride in their faces, not judgment. I'd done more than dance. I'd rewritten my story. The Duke's absence was a victory, his silence a concession. I looked at Edwin, his eyes shining with love and pride. The chandelier glowed above, a symbol of everything I'd fought for. The night was ending, but I wasn't. This was just the beginning. I stepped back, bowing slightly, and the crowd roared. I was no longer invisible. I was unforgettable. If you loved this story, please subscribe to our channel for more tales of triumph and defiance. Your support keeps these stories coming.